Pastor Ryan here as we come to week 13 of the Wesleyan Catechism. Having gone through the Ten Commandments, we are now in the Articles of Religion, the Methodist Articles of Religion. And we come today in the Catechism to question 15, which is about the 8th Article of Religion. And so question 15 is simply, what is the 8th Article of Religion? And the answer is this, Article 8 of free will. The condition of man after the fall of Adam is such that he cannot turn and prepare himself by his own natural strength to works, to faith, and calling upon God. Therefore, we have no power to do good works, pleasant and acceptable to God, without the grace of God by Christ preventing us, that we may have a good will, and working with us when we have that goodwill. So then the next question, question 16, is how does Wesley understand that concept, the 8th article of religion, the idea of humanity having free will? The answer comes to us from Sermon 57 on the fall of man. And so we have an excerpt from Wesley's 57th sermon. And the answer is this. God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Mark the emphatical repetition. God did not make him mere matter, a piece of senseless, unintelligent clay, but a spirit, like himself, although clothed with a material vehicle. As such, he was endued with understanding, with a will, including various affections, and with liberty, a power of using them in a right or wrong manner, of choosing good or evil. Otherwise, neither his understanding nor his will would have been of any purpose, or to any purpose, for he must have been as incapable of virtue or holiness as the stock of a tree. Adam, in whom all mankind were then contained, freely preferred evil to good. He chose to do his own will rather than the will of his Creator. He was not deceived, but knowingly and deliberately rebelled against his Father and his King. In that moment, he lost the moral image of God and in part the natural. He commenced unholy, foolish, and unhappy. And in Adam all died. That's from Romans. He entitled all his posterity to error, guilt, sorrow, fear, pain, disease, and death. So how exactly does matter of fact do all things round us, even the face of the whole world, agree with this account? Open your eyes. Look around you. See darkness that may be felt. See ignorance and error. See vice in 10,000 forms. See consciousness of guilt, fear, sorrow, shame, remorse covering the face of the earth. See misery, the daughter of sin. See on every side sickness and pain, inhabitants of every nation under heaven, driving on the poor, helpless sons of men in every age to the gates of death. So they have done well nigh from the beginning of the world, so they will do to the consummation of all things. Well, there's a lot in that. There's a lot that I want to start with that really pulls back into, and if you didn't watch week 12, I invite you to go back and to read that on original sin or birth sin, the idea that the whole world is come undone, that our affections are now wrongly ordered in our own hearts. And we've effectively become, as we were all in Adam, we are now all gone the way of Adam. We are all made in the likeness of Adam. And we all are now bent with our wills to our own sense of selfishness. So I want to start with taking upon just the regular rhetoric, just the language here in the 8th article of religion. And so there's a line here. And it's important for us to remember that post the fall, that we are now in a condition of, as all humans, and not in the way that God originally created us, and not certainly in the way that God intended us to be. But God, loving us, loving Adam and Eve, creating us in his image, gave to us free will. Adam and Eve had free will. They had the ability to not sin. In theological terms, using Latin, we say of Adam and Eve that they were posse non peccare. They were able to not sin. But now after the fall, we are all non posse non peccare, not able to not sin. We are sinners, and we sin because we are sinners, because we are in this condition. The Eastern Orthodox in particular talk about sin, not in terms primarily of what we do, sins of commission or even sins of omission, what we don't do, but rather as a sickness, as an illness in us, a condition of our own hearts. So I suffer from a chronic illness, and part of that is visible and it has a skin element to it. Most people go, oh, it's that skin disease. You go, no, it really is not a skin disease at all. It's a systemic autoimmune disorder, but you want to see what you see. You see one fruit, and you think that that's the sum total of what is wrong, and that's not really the illness. Curing the skin doesn't cure the illness, or making the skin better doesn't make the illness better. It just ameliorates one of the symptoms. So the problem with the human condition is in our hearts. And here that's what that language says. It is not in our own natural strength that we can turn and do works to faith and calling on God. We don't do good works in our own strength. We have no ability to do so. This is what Christianity has taught, and Wesley here, and borrowing this, taking this from the Anglican Church. This is really no different than what you would find in a Catholic church or a Baptist church, that we simply, those are very different obviously, that we simply are not able to, of our own selves, our own volition, do good. It says here we have no power to do good works. It isn't that we need some little help. It isn't that we need someone to give us a boost, to give us a push. I think of my kids when they were little and they were on the swing, and they said, "Daddy, push me on the swing." Right? They had a little bit of being able to move themselves, and they probably helped a little bit. But no, for us, it's more like we're not able to even sit ourselves on the swing. We have no power. There's nothing in us that enables us to do good works that are pleasing and acceptable to God. It is by God's grace only in Christ that we are prevented from being as evil as we might otherwise be, and only through the grace of God that we do good works. And so anything that we do good, any part of our will, of our volition, of our desire that works in us toward doing good is all attributable to the grace of God. And so that's why last week's is so important to do week 12, to look at Article 7 if you haven't done that. And how does Wesley understand that? Well, Wesley says that Adam here, and he speaks to Adam's ability, as we just said, to be able to choose. That God loved Adam enough to give Adam the ability to either freely choose God or freely turn his back on God. Because if Adam can't do otherwise, if Adam's will is bound only to do what God says, then he's not truly free. He's not truly autonomous. He's not truly made in the image of God. But God's desire in that autonomy of us is for us to rely on him. And so that was his desire for Adam, to enjoy the good that God had created. But instead, and Wesley here points out, it's not out of ignorance. There's no way in which Adam can say, well, I didn't know I was supposed to eat the tree of the knowledge of the fruit of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. I didn't know I wasn't supposed to do that. God had commanded him. Adam knew it. It was not out of ignorance that Adam did something that he ought not to have done, but it was with the full knowledge that he freely preferred, as Wesley says here, he freely preferred evil to good. Now, did he fully understand the extent of that? Perhaps not. Perhaps he listened to the lie of Satan that he would not surely die when he ate of that fruit. But what we know is from the history of the world is that this idea that sin is in the world is really undeniable. As Christians, it is in fact the explanation that we have for what is wrong with the world. That everything has gone off the rails. And it's truly remarkable here that the list that Wesley says, and it's actually kind of here in two places. But he said, this is the deal. We died in Adam because Adam did what he did. We don't have free will. And instead, this is what we are entitled to. He entitled all his posterity, that is us, that is all of humanity, to these things. Error, we're all in error. Guilt, we are all guilty. Sorrow, We all have known and know sorrow. Fear, we are all afraid. We're all afraid of something, and we may minimize that. We may try to push it to the side, but we live as those who have fear, pain. There's not a one of us who has not experienced emotional and spiritual and physical pain in this world, and those are a result of sin entering the world. And the next thing he says is disease. Disease is not the intended order that God created. He did not create any of us to be sick. Illness is not God's way, and yet illness is rampant in the world. It is something that we struggle and we wrestle against, that we have the grace of both of prayers of healing, but also the grace of medicine to be able to combat and to try to fight against the consequences of evil and the consequences of sin in the world. And then ultimately he says death. For the wages of sin is death. That's what Paul writes to the church at Rome. When sin is full born, sin always leads to death. Everyone dies. We die because we are sinners, and the price that is paid because of that is death. And we are all daughters of that. And Wesley says in this second part of the excerpt that you see this all around the world. This is undeniable. This is not something that we've made up. It's not some kind of pie in the sky kind of thinking. I think so oftentimes there's the wrong charge that Christianity is a religion where you just want to die and go to heaven. No, Christianity is rooted in the reality of the physical world, that God made us, as it says here, that God clothed us, though we're spiritual, though we're a spirit, God clothed us with a material vehicle. I love that term. No one would use that term, obviously, in the 21st century, but in the 18th century, that's what Wesley wrote, that we have this material vehicle, that we are shrouded in something material in the world. And so this doesn't negate the physical world. In fact, it lifts it up as the good creation of God that has gone wrong because there is sin in the world. And you can see this all over the world. People are ignorant and they're in error. There are vices in 10,000 forms. Everyone is conscious of their guilt, their fear, their sorrow, their shame, their remorse. This is common to the human experience. This doesn't happen because of our race or our gender or our age or our nationality. This is who we are as humans because we are fallen and we live in a fallen world. In fact, this is the way things will be from that day in which Adam sinned until the consummation of all things when Christ comes again. And so we see that here taught by Wesley. And so we don't have free will. We don't freely choose. We always choose, but with a bent toward evil. And the good news, of course, is that this is not the last article of religion. This is not where God leaves us, but God comes to us and he loves us. And so following subsequent weeks, really, as we unpack the good news of the gospel, that reorders and restores us to life and restores us to perfection after the fact that there is original sin and that we have no free will because we are inclined toward evil. God bless.